Kiara Hearn, and I am a data science immersive grad. My cohort was from October of 2020 until January of 2020. I suppose a little bit about me and my background. I always like to start by mentioning my first year of undergrad at college. I know it feels like for some of you it might not be so far back, but for me it's pretty far back. When I first went to college, I thought I was going to be an electrical engineer. I went in, I was rearing and ready, and then I started taking courses, and it was very difficult. I got intimidated pretty quickly, and I decided to pivot in terms of my major, and I chose something that was not technical at all. I was a humanities major in college, specifically studying Asian studies. I went to China, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, sort of the Eastern Asia space. And the thing was, is I was always just kind of bummed that I gave up on that tech dream. But I kept going. After college, I decided to pursue a career in education, particularly working in the nonprofit space. But about a couple of years ago, a friend of mine from college, she had actually completed a software engineering bootcamp, and she had founded her own company, and she needed engineers. But she was sort of in that early stage startup period where she didn't really have enough money to sort of shell out cash for engineers. And she remembered that I had started college as an electrical engineering major. And so I had a little bit of some programming knowledge. She was like, just come on board as an engineer. And at first I was kind of like, I don't really remember all of that stuff, but it was one of those things where once I began to immerse myself in this space, it really just lit a fire up under me. And again, because it was a startup, I had the opportunity to work in various different spaces. But the thing about that particular position that really galvanized me was the data. I love the data. I love looking at the data, sort of seeing the insights that we could give our customers from the data that they were collecting. So I wanted to gain more knowledge and gain more skills in the data science realm. But then last year happened. Early last year, I got sick at the beginning of the year. And so I eventually had to leave my job. And then I got COVID. Ended up being in the ICU for a month, on a ventilator for a full week. And so once I managed to recover, I really wanted to find a way to, one, sort of ease myself back into the workforce, and two, gain those skills and those knowledges that I had been yearning for before I had caught any illnesses. And then I discovered the BSI program. So I submitted an application, I was accepted, completed the program, and I suppose now I'm here. It was a moment of this wonder of, could I do self-study? And I quickly discovered, after sort of as I was beginning to sort of re-enter the workforce, that self-studying just wasn't for me. So I really don't think that if I hadn't had that time to sort of breathe and pause and recollect myself and understand my own knowledge and how I learn personally, that I wouldn't have pursued a boot camp. And so I'm thankful for that in that sense, right? That it gave me a moment to pause and really understand what it was I was looking for. I loved events like these. If you sort of scour Eventbrite, you'll find lots of different boot camps hosting lots of different events. But what really drew me to Galvanize was, one, the caliber of the events, and two, the wanting of everyone who hosted an event for people to participate. I was really blown away by the preparatory classes offered. So not only was there premium prep, but there was basic prep. There was prep that was there for free. There was a whole YouTube channel and Slack channel where I could actively engage with people who were teaching the material. And that was something that I found lacking at other boot camps. And so it really did feel like from day one, just a prep that I was sort of given some foundation and given people and support to lean on. If you guys are unfamiliar, StatQuest is a series of YouTube videos online by this guy named Josh Darmer. And he is very engaging. I'm one of those people, especially as sort of a person who has an education background myself, that loves when educators have fun with teaching. And so in addition to like the YouTube videos that were provided by Galvanize, I watch those StatQuest videos and I listen to the jingles, and sometimes I even sing the jingles to myself when I forget a topic that I'm trying to remember. So that was one that really worked for me. I also really enjoy Medium. Sort of, if you go on medium.com, there's a particular blog called Towards Data Science, and they have lots of just tutorials, things that you can follow along and sort of begin to get your hands a little dirty with data and data mining and data visualizations. So it's just one of those things where the resources are definitely out there all over the internet. I filled out the application. I had a couple of friends sort of read over my responses. But when I submitted it, it was kind of like a release. It's like, okay, it's out there. I at least tried. I was definitely prepared to, if I needed to, try to find some other way to fund the program, because I was like committed at that point. But when I heard that I got it, it was, I mean, there are very few like ways to describe like joy like that. Again, like, just to say it, like, I did have a fairly rough 2020. And so like to have that particular moment where it was like, here I am, like this is happening, the rest of my life is beginning, to be awfully cliche. It was just amazing. I cried, I called my mom, and I was like, I got the scholarship. But yeah, and it was just so nice. It was welcoming just from the very beginning. Like, alumni reached out, the instructors reached out, and just like, congratulations. And it was just, again, like a fortifying moment. It was great to see like hard work pay off. With the DSI, it's 5 days a week, 8:30 to 5:30, intensive learning. We have 2 lectures a day and then 2 sort of 2 or 3 hour long assignments. They were rough, but rough in the good sense, right? Like, again, I love learning, and I love teaching, and sort of, for me, teaching is learning, learning is teaching. It's very cyclical. So it's just like day-to-day learning and making sure that I felt great with the material. The instructors, the caliber of them is fantastic. I guess particularly I can speak towards the Austin campus. Like, Dan and Juliana are amazing. They really sort of take the time to explain things at a higher level, to find examples to give to you. And it was also great in the fact that we had the DSR. So I would like do an assignment, get really bogged down in it. We're working with pairs and partners, and you're sort of at this moment where you're like, do I even really understand what's happening? But you feel too scared to ask the professor. So it's nice to have someone there that's not the professor, but also knows a little bit more than you do. But beyond the 8:30 to 5:30 cents, it really just sort of felt more like a full-time job. But in the afternoons, I would spend anywhere from maybe, depending on the day, like an hour, maybe 2, reviewing materials, studying, prepping working on my own projects because again, the program does require you to complete 3 capstone projects. But they were days that were filled with a lot of work, but filled with a lot of joy. My particular cohort was pretty large. I think we were 12 or 13, and that's like large for a cohort. But it was like a great way to just like make friends and see how other people learn and then to learn yourself. There's some difficulty in the sense that like you can't just pick up your computer and bring it to your professor and say, here is where like my code is going wrong. But they really work around it. I really love there's so many tools in Zoom that you sometimes forget about as just like a passive Zoom viewer. Sharing your screen, being able to annotate on the screen, like you have that power as a student. Like thinking of different ways and modes to communicate exactly what it is that you're trying to show. And I think that both my peers and the instructors and the the DSRs all did really well in sort of like communicating that information, making sure that it was easily viewable and easily accessible, always being readily available on Slack. There's like tools to make sure that the Zoom experience is a good experience. With the position that I had before, it was specifically working in the homelessness space. And that is more in the realm of sort of the type of data that I enjoy looking at. Sort of again, I'm really interested in public policy, like how can we use data to make a difference? And in that respect, I am really interested in machine learning. I really just find it amazing that we can take data and make predictions and get out insights. That's just for me like something that's truly, I don't know, like exciting. For example, my last capstone project, I did a predictive model for student dropouts. Again, sort of tapping into my education experience and sort of seeing if like the data that we just collect day to day about students, like attendance, their grades, where they're from, what they're doing, how can we leverage that information to make predictions? And again, sort of not in a sort of clouded or jaded sense, but truly, if there are pieces that we can pick up that might be indicators, how can that affect like how we engage with students and the successful outcomes that we might see? Currently, I'm looking in a lot of different spaces. Most specifically like foundational spaces, nonprofit spaces, but I am also looking into big data spaces. So again, it's just a matter of I'm working with my career services manager. I'm trying to find places that I really just settle into. And I think that that's another piece of the galvanized experience that's really lovely to have someone there who will work with you and coach you and try to help you navigate the job searching space because I definitely needed that. So right now I've got my LinkedIn up, I'm open for work, I'm making connections via LinkedIn, finding those people that work in those spaces that I truly enjoy and have experience working with nonprofit groups, with public policy groups, like the Dell Foundation, the Obama Foundations, but also looking at things like Match or even smaller advertising companies, just so that again you can gain experience to continue building those foundational skills so that maybe one day you might have the skills to enter another space that you might be a little bit more interested in. Ask questions. And it's like something that I even like have to tell the students that I'm working with now. Like it sometimes feels scary when you're like sitting in lecture and you don't understand something and it's like, well, maybe I'll just try to figure it out on my own, or I can't like interrupt the lecturer, or even if it's like outside of lecture time and you're doing an assignment, like I don't want to be a bother, or I should know this, why don't I know this? Like there are a million reasons why one thinks that they shouldn't ask the question, right? But all of those reasons are wrong. Just ask the question, because I promise you, there is no judgment. The Someone else in the room is probably thinking that same question and wishes that they would ask it. Um, just be willing to ask questions, to be wrong sometimes. Just be open and really lean into the process.